The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
Hey, Rik.
Hey, Andrew.
We recently did one of our favorite things,
Yeah.
hosting a roundtable think tank.
And I saw that this week you did your second favorite thing, which is writing a blog about it.
Well, the roundtable think tank was on one of my favorite topics as well, AI, and specifically agentic AI. There were quite a few things that came up in there that we've heard before, but it was just more angles to the discussion. One of the things was something that I brought up in my panel in Amsterdam that we had recently, like, what is agentic AI? How was it different to just AI or RPA, process automation? And what I loved is that one of the participants gave the most visual explanation ever when they said, that's easy. Agentic AI has hands. It can do things. And I went, actually, that's a great summary example. All the other ones can't actually do something at the end. They have to wait for a human to do an end.
Well, not sure. I mean, the
assistance,
if this then that is capable of doing things, it just can't remember.
possibly, yes, it came around
So you need a
perception.
memory
reasoning.
too.
Yeah, perception, reasoning, action, having a persistent memory. But I like the agentic AI does things, whereas the assistance and all of that recommends and stops.
Well, the rule base doesn't by but okay. I mean, we don't need to have the whole conversation again. I think we should look at it from like a smiley with small little hands. It has a big head, probably with a memory, and it can also express feelings, which means that it can also think and reason in a way. So it can act, it can think, and can reason. And that's what agentic is, and that's what the big difference is with what we saw before. What I thought interesting is that it's the third time that we organize this with Cognizant and Microsoft. And every year that has been changing. We've been talking in different ways about AI. And I think last year there was still some hesitance about agentic. And this time it was all like a big fear if they don't act on it now. Not just fear of competition, but also fear of shadow AI and people just working with AI tools to build more performant things outside the corporate environment, which brings new risks, of course. So interesting.
There was actually quite a, I wouldn't say heated discussion, but an intense discussion where the guests had said that shadow IT was a recognized problem in the past, but shadow AI is a far greater risk because of the risk of potential data being misused, information leaked out of the boundaries. And the key recommendation that came out of that was education, implements, and having an AI playbook, which a lot of organizations haven't yet communicated to their staff to say this is what you can and can't do with AI at the moment. And I think that should be on a critical path of any organization that hasn't yet done
Yeah, I
that.
think it should also be a living thing because things are evolving so rapidly these days that only by building that playbook, you may be behind the thinking of some of your employees already. People that are tooling day to day in their evenings, for example, they know as first what's coming next. And if you then start building a framework, well, going back to discussion, agentic, a year ago it was nothing. And this year it's a big thing. Who knows where we are next year? So that must definitely be like a living thing to make sure that you can keep up with the recent developments. And that's challenging because so far, banks have always been very good in risk management and in managing risks. But in this case, things move so fast that it's scary to realize how.
The unknown unknowns,
Yeah.
the things that they don't know that they don't yet know about. That's That's the big risk area at the moment. That is the blank area. And it's not covered by regulation or anything like that at the moment. This is new territory for all the people on the table. But one of the things that you brought up was the risk of not doing anything. And I think that was also highlighted by a couple of the participants around the table whose resources maybe weren't quite what some of the others were. And one of the comments was around they haven't got the resources to scale their organization by hiring lots of employees.
At least not at the scale of their competitors.
Not at the scale of their competitors. Yeah. Therefore, scaling via AI is a genuinely lucrative option for them if they can scale their operations through AI deployment. But of course, there was a bit of a debate around that whole commonly quoted myth, maybe, of a 30% productivity gain through deploying AI, where there was conversations around that saying, yes, but 30% of a person doesn't remove a person. It just removes 30% of their work.
I also remember in that discussion, tremendous opportunity for smaller institutions if they can use AI to bridge the gap of talent to keep up with competitors, but you also need a critical mass of talent to guide the AI developments in the right direction, which requires talent again. If you want that playbook to be a living thing, it needs to be managed properly. So you're going to need much more and new talent, which is, again, a risk for these smaller institutions. How do you keep up?
And when we're talking about talent and hiring, we had quite a lot of conversation around the current structure of organizations that has typically, historically been in silos, and that it was hypothesized that the greatest gains from agentic AI will be agents that run across all of those silos. So it basically flattens those silos. And the only way that you would get the productivity or the gain or the benefit would be by completely re-engineering your organization not to have those silos. And I think that that's a difference between adding AI on top and becoming an agentic bank of the future. I think that's going to be something that I've seen lots of blogs and articles written about that just recently, about the need to reorganize organizations as opposed to just injecting AI to make things faster or easier for people. There was a new term that had come up. I don't know whether you remember it being used, context engineering. It's not something that I actually put in the blog. And it was a comment made by one of the participants that saying what an agent has access to at the time it needs to make a decision will determine the quality of that decision. So they said, if you can't provide that agent with full context, it won't be able to make a good decision, a high quality.
Though?
Sorry?
Is that new though?
It's not new, just the term was new to me, context engineering. So they actually said getting context engineering right is a critical discipline. So in other words, the agent or agents need access to all the data, not just it goes back to that siloed bit.
No. It needs access to all the data relevant to that context.
Relevant to that context. Correct, yeah. But it was the idea that there's a lot of organizations that are deploying AI within the current traditional silos. And those AI, whether they're agents or just AI tools, only have access to the data within that silo. But a fully agentic process that goes, let's say, from KYC and onboarding all the way through loan origination and getting out the other end, and maybe even being integrated into your fraud systems and everything, that agents that run like that need the correct data to have the context to be able to carry on operating along the way. So I just never ever heard the term context engineering before. That was a new one on me. There was another one where somebody had made the point, and we have heard it before, that creating an AI is like raising a child. But they had said too many people are currently viewing AI as building a machine, and that they can just take something, write code, and deploy it.
Mhm.
Whereas the agentic future is more like raising a child, in that it will be iterative, contextual, continuous learning, and it will gain trust over time as its behavior is understood, validated, and reinforced. And they were saying that it's more important than ever to view it like that when you're talking about an agentic system, because you need that trust to be built up. Trust is lacking at the moment, which is why people keep putting humans in the loop, right, to make decisions. But to achieve a fully agentic process, you have to, say, you have to be able to have a feedback loop in with the agent to
Yeah, I think as
validate.
such that is not so new, but if you treat those agents as your colleague, you know that with colleagues as well, it's an iterative process.
Mhm.
I mean, also, you did a great job in the beginning, but you're doing a much better job today, and that's because of iteration and doing things over and over again. Which, yeah, kind of makes sense. The more the machine becomes acting like a human, the more you need to treat it like a human in terms of education as well. It was all like the whole conversation was still like conceptual. It was about what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities, and more general examples were given. It was more about how the management needs to take care. How do you need to deal with the management, and how you focus on the governance of agentic, etc. And we can discuss the idea of swarms versus one big AI tool in a minute. I think that one very concrete thing that did come up was the hyper personalization, which again is not that new. It's been discussed for years and years, but I never really saw a proper, valid, well working solution so far. And maybe with Agentic, we may see that in the very near future, because, yeah, you and I already see it in a way that we can communicate to people. But if you can translate that in concrete offers, etc., you can personalize that in the context of transaction history, not just a rule-based transaction analysis. I think that could be a tremendous opportunity. And if you could do then cross silo, and you have a proper understanding of how that customer prefers to be reached out to, etc., that could be a golden solution to create true customer intimacy, and even a certain sense of empathy in the process again.
Interestingly, and this is going to be a blatant plug for a panel at the Banking Scene Conference in Brussels on the 28th of May, my panel, which is all about rethinking relevance of
Surprise.
customer engagement, where I have Edwin Saunders, a tribe lead innovation at Rabobank, Jonathan Neuberg, Chief Digital Data and AI Officer Belfius, Arti Gupta, Program Manager at Corporate Banking Operations Deutsche Bank, and Peter Lemon, Senior Consultant at FICO. And so far, I've only completed 2 of my panel prep calls, and I won't say who they're from, but in both of those calls, both of them, when in response to the question, where do you see the biggest customer benefit in a world of agentic AI? Both of them had said proactive engagement, which is an extension of that hyper-personalized. Both of them, independent of each other on separate calls, had said traditionally their organizations wait for the customer or are ready for the answer customer questions. But the customer has to come to them with questions. And they both said they see the benefit of agentic AI continuously monitoring, observing, making inferences from the accounts that those agents are looking after, that there will be a proactive engagement that will increase their customer stickiness, customer loyalty, that kind of thing. They too, and they weren't at the dinner, but they too were talking about hyper-personalization as being the key thing at the moment.
Yeah.
Seems to be the one that everybody is going for. But I'm just going to rewind just a little bit, because you had said about customer agents as employees, right? You had made a comment.
Say that again?
Employee.
Yeah.
You had talked about AIs as employees, right? And we did have a bit of a discussion around that, which got a bit esoteric at times, I think, because one of the suggestions was, yes, an agent should be treated like an employee. It should be on the payroll, as it were, given credentials, assigned to a manager, and the manager needs to be accountable for their behavior. Now, if I was in a bank today and I was told that I was going to be accountable for an agent's behavior, I'd be very nervous as to what I let that agent do today. Very, very nervous. What I let the agent do, I'll say.
I mean, you train them, or your people train them. There's an iterative process. It keeps learning, keeps understanding what to do, what not to do, except that it's not rule-based. What's the difference with a macro and Excel?
Yeah, you've got a point there, but maybe I'm just showing
It's
my
about
age.
trust, I think. It's about trust more than about technology.
It is about trust. And that's the core thing, is that it is about trust. None of the institutions around the table were ready yet to deploy a fully agentic, full agent to their customers at this point in time. It is very much internal. But the conversation came around the point that, can an agent be held accountable for its actions? And the answer was, well, of course not. Because what's the worst thing you can do to an agent? Delete it like it cares. That only a human can actually, at the end of the day, be accountable for an agent. And yeah, I'm glad I'm not working in a bank these days.
Related to that, I mean, there was also the whole discussion about transparency and how do you make sure that you can like turn off buttons when they need to be turned off, etc. And the whole discussion about dependency and how dependent are you going to make yourself from one big solution versus a multitude of small solutions that talk to each other, which I really liked as well.
And yeah, it does, however, raise risks. We've
Which
had
one?
that swarms, lots of agents. We've had the discussion around, yes, lots of agents doing individual things are easier to update, possibly. They've got a finite scope, and when something needs to be tweaked, you can go just to that particular agent handling that thing. But then there was the risk of complexity that somebody had brought up as well, saying, of course, if you do that, you're adding lots more complexity. So you've got to have that balance between how granular you make things and how much you treat that as one homogeneous system that sits across everything.
As with anything, how dependent do you want to make yourself from suppliers? Yeah.
Well, there is also that. And there was, there is a consideration when we're talking about how dependent on suppliers, there is a consideration around the dependency on non-European suppliers at the moment, which did come up and was addressed as a lot of European organizations are looking at sovereignty very closely and what they should do about it. But right now, most of them are going multiple models and applying the best ones in the best places.
I think that makes sense if you want to be a resilient organization today.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it was an engaging and interesting discussion that we look forward to continuing at the Banking Scene Conference Brussels on May the 28th.
And a week later in Amsterdam around dinner.
Yes, for those people who receive an invite, please accept it. It will be a great conversation. And with that, we'll wrap up this week's episode.
Thank you very much.